everyone. Thank you so much for coming to today's panel. So my name is Arnold Morales. I am the president of Non-Traditional College Success. Hopefully you've seen us around. If not, make sure to follow us on all the social media platforms right here. Today we're going to have a NASA panel. Hopefully you know that because you're here. And we're actually going to have Heather be the moderator for this panel. Heather is one of our leads. He's been doing a great. Heather's one of our OG listeners of the podcast and has just been volunteering to help out with running events. So he's running this. He's going to be moderating this panel. Heather is a student at the University of South Florida. He's a president of an organization there, and he's actually has an internship for this summer with Tesla. So we're all really excited for him. And Heather, welcome to the stage, and it's your show now.
Thank you for the introduction, Arnold. Hi, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And I'm going to be moderating the show. So today we're going to have a really straightforward layout. What I'm going to do is in the next couple of minutes, I'm going to cover some ground rules. And then from there, we'll take on the presentation and I'll let you guys know how this is going to work out. So first of all, I would really highly appreciate if you can keep yourself on mute until we reach to the point where there's questions. So we're going to let the panelists talk for the first half of this segment. So keep yourself muted, and when questions come in, make sure you use the raise hand feature, and I'll pick on your name from the list, and you can unmute yourself, turn your camera on, or put the question in the chat, and the panelists would answer your question. So how it's going to go is in the next 15 minutes, we're going to have a general presentation, an overview of what NASA is, which locations, or do what projects, and all that good stuff. Then we're going to have the panelists talk about their journey, introduce themselves. And then in the last 20 to 30 minutes, sorry, we're going to have questions. So until then, I'm going to pass it to Eddie, who's going to start the presentation.
Thank you, Hader. Wow, what a great group that I'm looking at, and I see that some of my mentees are on the call. That's awesome. If you don't mind, Hader, I'll go ahead and I'll introduce myself now, so they know who I am and how I have all this knowledge of NASA. I started working with NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in 2001, and I started as a business administrator. But I quickly noticed the lack of diversity at the center. I was very disappointed, actually. So I took it upon myself to get involved with the education side of the house and try to make a difference. And one of the things that I realize and I recognize is that students are not aware of opportunities. So what I wanted to do was to kind of make myself accessible to people and tell people about these opportunities. And how do you do that? You can do that at career fairs, national conferences, and then also through trade techs, community colleges, minority serving institutions, universities, HBCUs, et cetera. So I was able to work in the education office, working in that platform. In 2008, I actually had an opportunity to be a detailee at NASA headquarters, which was amazing because it allowed me to really find out the inner workings of NASA and how they do things. When I got to NASA headquarters, I was super excited, thinking, oh my goodness, I made it, headquarters, right? It's pretty boring. It's just an office, conference rooms. It's really administrative. All the fun stuff happens at the centers. I went back to JPL in 2014. I was asked to go back on a fellowship, and that was a really turning point for me because it allowed me the opportunity to actually manage some of these programs that bring in underserved, underrepresented communities. And I did that until 2018. And then I moved to the East Coast, and I now work at NASA Goddard. I started off as a principal of STEM engagement, and now I'm the diversity, equity, and inclusion lead for my division. I work in heliophysics. Some of the missions at Goddard are James Webb, which is going to launch this year, Parker Solar Probe, just to name a few. And at this time, I'll go ahead and I'll mention all of the different NASA centers. So Hader, if you want to throw that map up there. In California, there's 3 NASA centers. There is the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and they deal with unmanned robotic missions. And Susie and Claudia will be talking about that in detail later and all the fun things that have happened there recently that I'm sure you're aware of. And then you go to Ames, you go to Armstrong in Texas, you've got the Johnson Space Center. Obviously, they train the astronauts there. You've got White Sands in New Mexico, where they do a lot of testing. You've got the Glenn Research Center in Cleveland. You've got Marshall in Huntsville, Alabama. Then you can go down to Stennis in Louisiana. Obviously, the Kennedy Space Center, where we do most of our launching. I'll go all the way up the coast to Wallops, which is also a part of NASA Goddard, and they do a lot of launching there as well. And then you've got Langley and Goddard in Maryland, and then obviously you've got headquarters, and then you've got all of these other little satellite centers that NASA is a part of. So with that, I'd just like to say thank you again for being here. And it has been such a ride to work for NASA. So one of the things that I will say, because people ask me this question often, why NASA? Why should I work there? Why should I not work at, say, SpaceX or Blue Origin? And those are the two names that seem to come up because they're in the private sector. Well, let me say this. First of all, I love SpaceX and I love Blue Origin. We do a lot of collaboration with them, and I think competition is important. It makes us all work harder and work better. So why not SpaceX? But the difference I see and what I hear, in my opinion, is this, is that at NASA, if you're working 50, 60 hours, management's going to come to you and say, what can we do to help you? We want to make sure that you have quality of life. And do we need to help you? Can we send somebody to help you? Do you need a team of people to help you? And that's the response you're going to get. At least that's what I've received over my 20 years working at NASA. And from some of the people that I know that work at SpaceX, if you work 50, 60 hours, they're going to say, why aren't you working 70? Again, I'm not pushing SpaceX out of the picture of anything. I think they are amazing. But with NASA, it's just a little bit different. You're not going to get paid millions of dollars if you work for NASA. If you're chasing the dollar, obviously you want to go to SpaceX. But quality of life, friendly affinity groups, a place that you feel safe, a place that you feel important. I think it's an amazing place, and I love what I do, and I love the people that work there. I think they're amazing. So Hader, let me kick it back to you so some of these amazing people that are on this panel can tell their story.
Sweet. Thank you so much. And next up, we would like to go to JPL. So, Susie, would you want to introduce yourself and kind of talk about the projects you've been involved at?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Susie. I've been working at JPL for 2 years already. I would say that it's an amazing company to work with. I feel like everyone that I've met, everyone's very embracive. Some of the big projects, one of the biggest projects that we just previously worked on, I can feel that maybe a lot of you guys already know, will be like Perseverance. So that's like one of the projects that my team and I worked on. We do cybersecurity, so we had to make sure that it was secure. So watching the launch, I'm like, it better not be hacked. Watching it land, it was a great accomplishment for our end, for our team. Other projects that I've been involved with would be for Psyche. That one is coming up. It's normally kind of like launching a flight system that's going to land on an asteroid that looks like it's made out of metal. So that's going to be a pretty exciting project. And then another one would be SWOT, which is surface water and ocean topography. It's kind of measuring the water of Earth. And so, yeah, it's crazy because like how I got to JPL when I was in school, no one told me about internships. I just kind of started digging. I'm like, how can I get into my dream job? And I got into Juniper Networks internship at Sony Pictures. And then I got very lucky landing an internship at JPL. And I was really scared because it's like everyone around me had like 5 PhDs. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm all here like trying to get a master's and it's really hard. But then once you get there, you're like, wow, like everyone's learning. We're all here learning. We're all here trying to do what's best, trying to make history in space, and like just seeing things land on different planets, or learning about other like exoplanets is beyond amazing. I guess like for like my struggle, I went to school for many years, and it's like I didn't come from like one of those huge universities. I actually failed a lot, to the point where I failed out of a university and I had to go back to another university. And to just see like being at JPL, it's like, well, you know, like anyone can do it. You just have to keep pushing forward. You can't give up. You can't quit no matter what people say. You just push forward and study, and areas where you're like, oh, well, you know, I want to learn a little bit more about physics, and go for it, take a class. But yeah, those are like some of the big projects that my team and I have been working on. And I'll pass the ball to Claudia.
Yeah, hi everyone. So my name is Claudia. I am actually an optomechanical intern at NASA JPL. So kind of something like Susie was talking about, some of the projects that we have. The huge one that just actually passed was the landing of Mars Perseverance. Um, so we also work on other rovers. So we have Curiosity. So Perseverance actually joined Curiosity on Mars, and we also have the Mars helicopter on the rover Perseverance. And kind of like Susie was talking about, we do also have exoplanet missions. So actually, a lot of the work that I've done is more on like telescopes or instruments. So my first project that I worked on was actually designing a space telescope, and it's like for a proposal. So I was a part of the astrophysics decadal survey. And so essentially what the decadal survey is a call to NASA to basically have the scientists think about what are the next big science questions that we want to answer about the universe, and basically have different teams have their approach of different sciences and come up with a design that closes and an idea that we can basically hopefully invest in the future. And that's basically what I did. I helped a team put together their idea into an actual 3D model of a lower cost alternative to one of the projects. So the project that I worked on was HAVEX, and it's habitable exoplanets. Um, and yeah, and basically my story is I come from a low income community, so from South LA, South Central Los Angeles, and I had no exposure to STEM. I actually didn't know about engineering when I entered community college. And similar, I have my failures along my journey. So there's so many distractions that I faced in the community that I came from, and my senior year, which was just really overwhelming, and I actually ended up getting a D in one of my classes, which cost me my admission to my four-year university. And it was really difficult for me. I thought I couldn't do it, and I actually had a teacher who would constantly tell the class, you guys are just not ready for university. And I believe that. And it kind of took a hit and to my confidence and my belief in myself. But luckily, I've always had this passion for NASA. I've always had this amazement of the sky, of the universe. I always feel really weightless when I look up, because I can just imagine everything that's out there that we still don't know anything about. So I'm super passionate about space exploration. I knew that I wanted to pursue NASA one day. And I was a part of the California Science Center. That's basically what kind of fueled that passion for STEM. And then I was a part of NCAS, which is NASA's Community College Aerospace Scholars. And that's really what opened the door for me at NASA. And yeah, I transferred from my community college to my university. And now I'm basically interning at JPL as I finish up my undergrad degree. And I'll pass it over to Leslie.
Hello, everyone. I'm Leslie Smith, and I currently work at Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. This center is basically a propulsion center, mostly do solid and liquid propulsion. We are the lead center for the Human Landing System, which is my current project, and the SLS or Space Launch Systems. We also have our sister center, Michoud Assembly Facility, or MAF, located in New Orleans. It is one of the largest additive manufacturing facilities in the world. That is where the Space Launch System components, such as the stages element and everything, comes together. They do lots of welding and lots of 3D printing there. And we use our other center, Stennis Space Center in Base St. Louis, Mississippi, for all of our engine testing. They had an engine test in mid-January. Unfortunately, that one didn't go as planned, and they were supposed to be trying to get one late February or early March to do one of the main engine testings for SLS. And this time they were going to fire all 4 engines. So my story is I am a proud graduate of the illustrious Tuskegee University with a degree in mechanical engineering. How I got to NASA is just I went to this career fair. At first, I wasn't going to go. I was going to take a break in between my math class and my calculus class and my chemistry class to take a 3-hour nap. But I was always told to, hey, you need to at least try to get an internship somewhere. Go bring copies of your resume. You never know where it could lead. And I ended up getting an interview for a co-op position, which is currently Pathways, on the spot. And so I began my career at NASA in January of 2009. So I've been there 12 years and I've gone to all different departments and I've enjoyed it the whole time. Thank you. Now I guess I'll pass it to Eddie or Adar.
Yeah, thank you so much. And now, last but not least, Zanet, your story.
Thank you, Heather. Hi, everyone. My name is Junaid Abdullah. I'll start with my story. So I was born in Bangladesh, and I'm a first generation immigrant. I grew up in Queens, New York, most of my life, though. So that's what I really consider home. I went to school upstate New York. It's called the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, RPI, where I majored in aeronautical engineering. And my intern experience. So junior year, you know, I was really looking for internship opportunities. I struggled at the career fair. You know, we had big names come. We had Boeing and Honeywell and Johnson and Johnson. You know, are the ones that I can think of. But I didn't have much luck, unfortunately. And I was never told kind of what I had to work on. So come junior year, I am trying to get an internship, and I literally, I kid you not, every day I would apply to an internship. Like that would be my goal for the day. And I wasn't being picky. You know, I wanted the experience because and I'm sure many others have faced this. You know, it's the catch-22 of getting the internship, but you don't have experience, and then how are you supposed to get the experience if you don't have the internship? So I applied every day, and I was able to get a NASA Pathways internship with Johnson Space Center. So I started my intern experience in 2016, and I did a few rotations within Johnson Space Center. Went back and finished up my last year, and then I came on board with the flight operations group. So if you don't know by now, Johnson Space Center is the primary home for the astronauts, both domestic astronauts as well as all the international astronauts from ESA and from JAXA, as well as now we just had some astronauts join us from the United Arab Emirates, and then of course over at Russia we have our cosmonauts. They actually all have at one point in their lives trained in Houston. We also have the primary mission control for the International Space Station. We do have some others over at Huntsville. They have they oversee a lot of the payloads, but for the International Space Station, that happens out of Johnson. So I trained to be a flight controller for the first few years of my life. I had the opportunity to sit in mission control, and on few occasions actually speak with the astronauts that were on the International Space Station. I then switched over to the safety group, and now I'm currently a system safety engineer. And if you remember at the beginning, Eddie kind of talked about the commercial partnerships that NASA has. I am lucky that I get to work alongside folks that are building a spacecraft out of Sierra Nevada Corporation in Louisville, Colorado. So I get to do a lot of cool things in overseeing the vehicle and making sure that their safety, matches our requirements, because obviously, at the International Space Station where that spacecraft will be going, their safety, the crew safety is number one above all. I think I'll leave it there. Heather, I do have some words of wisdom that I'd like to share probably towards the end. Who's my favorite astronaut? I would have to say it's Victor Glover. He is currently at the International Space Station. I got to know him when he was still going through the astronaut training corps, and he invited me and a few others to sit in this training cockpit, and he has gone above and beyond for interns so much that it left an impression on me. So Victor Glover, I would say, is my favorite astronaut. Thank you.
Thank you, all of you, for sharing so much about yourself and the Space Center. So, what I'm going to be doing next is that while the audience comes up with their questions, I'm going to start the question round with, asking questions based on just the presentation we had. And I'm just going to go around the room and hopefully we get some amazing answers. So, my first question is, knowing what you know now and learning from your journey, what is one thing you wish you knew as a student? I would like, Eddie, going back to you, how would you go with
Wow.
that?
Wow. That's a tough one. Well, here's the thing for me, and I appreciate everybody's story. And Susie said that she had a long journey, and I can appreciate that. But what I didn't share with everybody is it took me 17 years to get to NASA. And I'll tell you why. Right out of high school, I got my girlfriend pregnant. So I wasn't in a position, I was all set going to a community college. I was going to Mount San Antonio, but I had to immediately stop my classes and find a job that had benefits. So I got a job, entry level position at a law firm, and I climbed the corporate ladder there and was doing really well for myself. And it took me that long to gain the experience necessary so I could actually get to NASA. I've always wanted to work for NASA, but the amount of hours that I was working at the law firm at the time didn't allow me to go back to school. I just couldn't do it. So when you ask the question of what I know now, what would I change? I don't think I would change anything because, I have my beautiful son. He's an adult now and he has his children and I adore him. And, he's a sophomore. He wants to go to Caltech. He's a robotics master and he wants to be an engineer and he's going to do it. I know he will. So the only thing that I can say is that I will give him the knowledge that I have and that I've gained from a lot of students, like Claudia, for example, with her struggle and how she's going to school. And I can share with Elijah some of the stories like Claudia and others to not make the same mistakes, or if there is a easier path, then maybe that's the path choice you should take.
Thank you. That was a great, great, great answer. So I already see that someone has their hand raised. So I'm going to start moving towards questions from the audience. So Donovan, I see your hands up. You can unmute and go with your question.
Hello, panelists. Thank you very much for taking the time to be here with us. Really appreciate it. And my question to you all, actually for the whole panel, is what are you guys seeking for a NASA intern? And what makes you more competitive within the internship application pool? That's my question.
Sweet question. So who wants to, I guess I'll go around the room and I'll start with Claudia because she's currently interning. So I would want to know from your experience how you would answer that question.
Yeah, so definitely, I think what makes you stand out is that you don't give up. If you're like persistent, if NASA is truly where you want to be, then you will put yourself out there continuously to network with the people from NASA. What is it that I can do? Or not even approach something that I realize also is your approach to networking. You don't necessarily approach someone and say, like, I want an internship. Can you give me one? It's more so of like, hey, I know that you work for NASA. I wanted to have a conversation with you. What are some things that you can tell me? Like, ask for guidance and really learn from those people. And what is it that they're looking for? Have a conversation, build that relationship, let them know where you're at, and nurture those relationships. Because when an internship opportunity does come up, and let's say it's not through you applying directly towards the application portal, and you have these people who are looking for an internship, they have you in mind because they know where you're at in your education career. They know the skills that you bring, that you're working on. they know you a little bit more personally, and they know that you would be a great fit for that internship position. And that's actually kind of how I got my internship. I basically reached out to the mentors who I connected to or with at NCAS, and I let them know where I was at. Sorry, there's background noise. But I let them know where I was at, what I was struggling with, if they could just help guide me in my path. And then I got one of my mentors who reached out and say like, hey, I'm looking for an intern. Are you interested? And I was like, of course. And I think that's really what helped me is networking, getting to know these people, building those relationships. And it's not just about, having that, throwing in the application in the portal, but actually connecting with people, having those conversations and looking at what is it that they're looking for, and apply that to what is it that you're doing and working on yourself and building your resume to meet those requirements that they need.
Thank you for sharing that. I saw Leslie. Leslie, you mentioned that you also have something to share, so I would love to hear your perspective.
One of the questions in the chat was, how does someone stand out at the career fair? For me, I was always told that first impressions are lasting impressions. So make sure you are dressed for success. Dress up if you have to, dress like the job that you want. That's the first thing, because people will judge you by, your looks. Make sure you look professional as possible. I would update my resume as often as I can, and to make it accurate. You don't want to bring in a resume from a few years ago. And make sure you have your interests together too. Like for me, I was telling people that, hey, I'm interested in design and manufacturing. Those are some of my main things that I'm interested in. Is there any opportunities out there that will allow me to utilize those skills? Know what you bring to the table. And like I said, have an interest and have a statement on your resume saying that what you are looking for, internship or a full-time opportunity, and so forth. That's one of the things that I would say that would really make you stand out. And also collect when we were in person, you could collect the business cards, but we're virtual now. Get their contact information and stay in touch with them, and use some of the advice that Claudia said, like, don't just ask, can I have an internship? Let them know what you bring to the table, what are your interests, and say, hey, if there's any opportunities available, please keep me informed about them.
That's a great point. So does any other panelists have any other points to add?
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, you go right ahead.
So I would add, do your research on the company, right? Know what their values are, know what the mission statement is. So when you go there, you at least have an idea of what they do, and you're clear that, okay, this is the place that I want to work at, right? So that's one thing that I have seen. From the other side is sometimes you ask, the intern, so what do you like that we do here? And sometimes I get a blank stare. So kind of, what Leslie touched on do your homework. I would add to that. Thanks.
All right, I see. I think someone has their hand raised. So why don't you unmute yourself?
Hi. Okay, so I'm Leah. So I have a question. So kind of going along with, I guess you guys were talking about like mentoring earlier. So I was interested to see if, like, how can I possibly like find like a NASA like mentor, since I think someone was talking about that earlier. I want to see if I can actually get paired with some, because I am interested. I mean, I actually have my application like pretty much done. That was ready to like submit today, but I wanted to come here to get to like learn more before submitting. So I just want to see. Okay, mentor that word. Okay, thanks. Also, hi Eddie. I don't know if you remember me. I met you at SHIP Nationals.
Hey.
Alrighty.
Hader, I'll kind of answer that question. So one of the things that I think is really important, like, let's just say that you are a electrical engineer. So this is what I would do. I'm trying to get an internship somewhere, right? So I would type in top 10 electrical engineers at NASA. And now I've got a list of 10 people in front of me. Then what I would do is I would go to the top person, and it doesn't matter what order they're in, and just say, what have they authored? Do they have a white paper? Have they presented? Is there a poster? And then look at that poster, read their article, and then come up with a list of questions, and then maybe reach out on LinkedIn and say, I've read your paper on XYZ. I'm in the same field. I would love to have a 15-minute coffee Zoom with you to ask you a couple questions. But this is important. If you do that and they do agree to it, you don't say at that 15-minute conversation, can I send you my resume? I'm looking for an internship. No, you let them answer their questions and you keep interested, and you hope that they will say, why don't you send me your resume, or what is it that you're trying to accomplish? If they don't ask you that question, then move on to the next person. If anything, you're building your network, which is super, super important. And then as far as mentoring is concerned, that's the same thing too. Some of the things that I like to look for when I'm looking for mentors, and I've got many mentors, is to look for bridges. What could those bridges be? So for example, I've got a NASA green screen behind me right now, but if I was going to talk to somebody, I might have a different background. I might have a drum or a guitar or a picture of the Beatles or something. So somebody could say, you know what, I'm interested in music too. I play the piano. Now we've found a bridge, and now we can take this conversation to a different level. And now they can relate to me in some way, shape, or form. Or maybe it's my hat, or maybe it's my glasses. It could be something. And once I can establish that relationship, then I feel it's a way that I can say, I really like what you're doing. I would love for you to mentor me. How can I do that? And either the person's going to say yes or no, but you always respect their time.
That is a great point. So I'm going to address the next question from the chat, because I don't see any more hands raised. And this one I would want Susie to answer, because you kind of mentioned about, uh, being in school for a little longer. And I think this kind of hits the question hits the right note. So the question is by Angelica, and she says, although qualified and once arrived, did you at any point in time experience what is now being recognized as the imposter syndrome?
Oh my gosh. I feel that every day, and my whole team feels it. Literally, I would say almost everyone feels it. And if they say that they don't, then they're lying. You communicate with people from different teams, and they all have their own set of skills. And sometimes you can feel like, oh my gosh, I don't understand what they're saying, but that's okay, because everyone has their own set of skills. Like Claudia, when she was just saying what she does, I'm just like, damn, like this girl. But for me, like I went to school for cybersecurity. So if I start talking about cybersecurity, another person can start feeling, whoa, I don't know that. And that's okay. We have our own set of skills, and we have to embrace those. And sometimes when we feel like, oh my gosh, I don't belong here, or like I'm just not smart enough, like I just talk to myself. I'm like, no, like I have my own set of skills. Everyone's different, and we're here because we're needed, for whether if it's at school or whether if it's at work. I've dealt with imposter syndrome literally throughout my whole life. But I just kind of talk myself out, and I'm like, I don't have time for this. Like, no, like life is too short to try to kind of embrace that imposter syndrome. But if anyone ever feels that way, it's normal, it's completely okay. And it's anyone can feel it. So like I said, like I failed out of school like one time, and I'm like, wow, like I'm a fake person. And then I go to another school, and then I graduate. I'm like, I don't know, maybe I got lucky. And then the internships, maybe I got lucky. And then one day I'm like, no, So if you ever feel that way, that you feel like you're just lucky, or like, oh, all that stuff, like don't listen to that. Embrace your skills. Those skills are needed. So hopefully that answers the question.
I can definitely relate to that. Zane, do you have anything to add on to that?
So when I moved over to safety, I was in a room with people that had 30 plus years of experience, and here's myself with 3 years of experience. So they have 10 times as much, or at least that's what I thought. So it made me the quiet person in the room. And it wasn't until I spoke to a mentor that said that, hey, look, those folks with 30 years of experience, they may not have the technical experience that you bring to the team. So keep that perspective in mind, that yes, they may have expertise somewhere, but you were hired on and chosen to do that job. So there are skills that you have, right, as well as the communication skills to, as you said, like say, hey, I don't know, speak up and ask when things don't make sense, because what's worse than not knowing is not asking about it and sitting there and not you're not gaining anything, and the team that you're working with not also getting anything out of it. So I've had imposter syndrome. I still have it now. I've just learned how to manage it better and really just ask the questions, because one day you will be that person that has 30 years in the room, and somebody new will come in, and you can empathize with that.
I cannot agree more. I saw Leslie, you mentioned something in the chat. Would you want to speak a little about that too?
Sure, about the imposter syndrome. Everybody experiences that at some point. I know I have at work several times. I've even experienced it at an engineering camp in high school. I just felt like everybody was so smart. They had higher test scores and may have had higher GPA than me. They seemed like they were just in the know about engineering, and here I am, don't really know hardly anything about engineering. And same thing on the job. I feel like, well, these people have been here since the Apollo era. A few of them left, or since the shuttle era. I have no idea how these basic propulsion systems work. So the way I would combat it is ask questions and be yourself. The worst thing you can do is to pretend you know something that you don't, because eventually people will find you out because you're going to say something that doesn't make sense. And then they're going to be like, why didn't you ask, or why didn't you speak up earlier that you didn't know or that you didn't understand? And I would say, speak positive affirmations over yourself. Say that, hey, I am enough. I am smart. I'm just as smart as everybody else. No, I may not have all the answers, but I'm willing to find out some things. So that's some of the ways that I would combat the imposter syndrome. And just ask questions and realize that these people who have PhDs and 35 years plus of experience, they had to start somewhere too. They didn't always have that.
It is so true. I see someone said, I have another question. Okay, go for it. You have a question about imposter syndrome?
Yeah, so since we're talking about that, so basically, one of my concerns is like, so there's a lot of different NAC centers in different locations. I think it's great, but my concern is like, so my hometown, I go to Michigan State. It's really diverse, but I'm currently doing an internship right now, in an area that's not anywhere as diverse as it was there, and I've experienced a lot of racism and a lot of stuff. And I'm in Alabama, and I used to be in Michigan. I used to be in I'm from Metro Detroit area. The point is like, I like my job and stuff like right now. Well, I mean, I am looking for like an opportunity at NASA potentially, but like I want to be like in a city or somewhere where there's people. I mean, where there's people like me, like where I feel safe, because I don't feel safe where I'm at, and I'm like, and I wanted to ask the people that work like at NASA, like where you work and like how do you feel about like the minority community there? Like, is there like a sense of community? Because here there's not. Well, I'm from Mexico. I'm Latinx, but there's not really much here, and I like if I do work somewhere, maybe like an internship that might turn to not long-term opportunity, like that is really important. So basically, I just want to ask like those that work at NASA, like where's the location? How do you feel like there's a community there?
That's a great question, Hader. For me, I'll share a mistake that I made in 2008. When I got the detail at NASA headquarters, NASA was going to pay for my housing. So they said, just pick a place. So I went online and I found this amazing apartment. I was like, oh my goodness, it overlooks Washington, D.C. This is great, right? And when I got there, my stuff was there. I was super excited. And then I found out I was the only brown skin in that whole apartment building. I didn't do my research, right? And I wasn't close to a metro stop, and there was no store close to me. So what I tell students is this, and this is important: if you get an internship and maybe you've been turned down a few times, you need to think about where you're going, especially when this pandemic ends and we've got this new normal. Where are you going? Does that center have affinity groups where you can actually get involved with HASE or natives at NASA or so on and so forth? the neighborhood that you're going to move to or your housing. Is it safe? Is it in a community that you feel comfortable in? These are important things that you need to ask. How does the center feel about diversity, equity, and inclusion? Do they make everyone feel equal? These are important things to ask. Don't just grab the first internship that you get. Ask questions. It's so important.
I want to add something to that real quick. Wow, thanks for sharing that. I personally would say, if you're experiencing racism and discrimination where you are at, I think it goes beyond NASA. Um, you know, yes, go work at a really cool place, but you also have your life, right? Kind of what Eddie mentioned at the beginning, the work-life balance. And part of that balance, right, is having that sense of security and that peace of mind. And if you're not getting that, then there are other NASA centers around the country, right? Look at those opportunities. And, if there's a city they really like and there isn't a direct NASA connection, maybe there's an indirect way to work in a similar industry. The point I'm trying to make is that those kinds of things really mess with your quality of life. And while working at NASA is great, you really need to make sure that the rest of it is just as good, if not better.
I actually would thank you so much for both of you for answering that, but I would actually want to hear the perspective of all panelists on this question. I feel like this question applies to almost all of you. And next up, I would ask Claudia, then Leslie and Susie in that order, and you can share your perspective on that. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, the lighting is kind of weird. But what I wanted to say about that is, I feel like at first you're not aware, at least for me, I wasn't aware. In my personal journey, I wasn't aware. I feel like I was in a bubble. Sometimes like, coming from like a Hispanic household, like that's just kind of all you know. And you don't expect people to point out that maybe you're a woman and you're like the only woman in the room. And that makes you different. I've gotten so many comments about, oh, how have you gotten your internship at NASA? Or I can't believe that you got your internship. Or how is it that you're struggling in this class, but yet you work for NASA? It's almost like I'm some kind of, I don't know, alien, or like I'm not human because I work for NASA, or like whatever the case is. And all I can really say to that is, I know it's going to be difficult to speak up at first. It was definitely difficult for me. Again, going back to like our culture, from my perspective, I grew up in a household where, when the man is talking, you don't say anything. Um, you just kind of take it, and like they're lecturing, and so you sit there and you listen. And I didn't realize how that was affecting me professionally, from being an engineer, because I'm in a room full of men and they're asking me, I'm a vital person or a valuable person on this team, and I have something to input. I need to learn how to speak up, even if it's in a room full of people who don't look like me. I need to combat that imposter syndrome. I need to combat that anxiety, because sometimes like I'll think of an idea and I don't say that, but then later somebody else says that idea and I'm like, oh my God, why didn't I say that? And it's because it's like that doubt. So yes, you're going to experience people who, might be racist, or they're not going to believe in you. But I think it really all starts with getting to know yourself and like your self-love, and just being comfortable with who you are and be authentically yourself. And once you like tune into that self-love and being confident in what you have, and knowing that you're valuable, and all your experiences along your journey help to shape you into an amazing engineer, you'll know that these comments, they're not going, you can speak up and say something like, what do you mean by that? And it'll kind of, make them aware of what they said wasn't okay, or, your comment didn't make me feel comfortable. You can say different things like that and use your voice. And hopefully along the way, you also have an ally. Maybe look for a colleague who you feel comfortable with. And if you can't say something, that they'll speak up for you and say like, hey, it's not okay to say that. So it is going to be difficult. Um, that's why there is people. We're doing work to make sure that there is diversity and inclusion at these companies. But you belong there. If you've worked hard, you're putting in the work that you have, you're taking the initiative to be at events like this, you deserve to be there. So yeah, and there's also a community, thankfully, online that I've found of like women in STEM, and we talk about different things like this. We build that community so we have that support system of people from different backgrounds, so that you don't feel like you're alone because you're not.
That was a great point. Leslie and Susie, would you want to share your thoughts on that too?
Sure, I will. Well, two things I had to get used to and going into the engineering world or the engineering discipline is to get used to being the only African American and the only woman in lots of cases. And just about every team I work on, that is the case. Um, so for me, I went to Huntsville, Alabama. I didn't have any friends nor any relatives. I had a few people from school who were originally from there, but they weren't there at the time that I was there simply because they were in school and I was co-oping, or I was interning in Huntsville and they were in Houston or somewhere. So sometimes they would tell me about different things that would go on, like different events. I would also reach out to some people at work. They had to become some of my first friends. They were the ones who told me about the Tuskegee Alumni Club. So I do recommend that you get involved in your alumni club and at your local chapter. That can help build your network. And also you get to be around some people that may look like you and could tell you about different events that are going on in the city. Also getting involved in NSBE or SWE, that also helped. And they could like tell me, okay, here's the best places to go. Here's some churches to go to if you're interested in that. So that was how I kind of deal with the diversity and inclusion. I hear there are some minority groups at NASA, but they don't really talk about them much. Like I just found out about them a few weeks ago. And I know in industry, they talk about their African American Forum or their Hispanic organizations all the time. So to me, like it's like Eddie mentioned, diversity and inclusion is important, and see how a company deals with that or how important that is to them. And I know it's starting to be very important with NASA. It was important before, but with all the civil unrest that happened within these past several months, almost a year ago, it's become even more important. So I know NASA just added um, a fifth statement, a fifth principle to their mission, inclusion now. So I think that's one of the ways that I would say that diversity and inclusion has helped me. I'll turn it over to Susie.
I'm going to echo a lot what Leslie said. The same thing with JPL. There's a lot of diversity groups at JPL, and I signed up for those. They have like meetings, and everyone getting together and expressing what they feel and whatnot. And for me, it makes me feel a little less alone. Because throughout like my whole journey in the IT field per se, like I was always the only woman slash Hispanic. It got to a point where I'm just like I'm already used to it. But sometimes I'm just like, I don't know, I feel a little alone. So I do sign up for groups like that. And JPL really, they really put that out there. Like they're very much aware. So applying at JPL, you wouldn't feel that way. Like, oh, I'm going to feel a certain way because of the color of my skin. JPL is really working on that area.
Perfect. So I see there's a hand raised, but before I do that, I would like everyone to turn their cameras on so I don't forget and we can take a picture for LinkedIn, and great way to networks too. So turn your cameras on and I'll count down when you guys. Okay, so 3, 2, 1, smile. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So now I see your hand raised. You can unmute yourself and go for the question. Noon, I believe. They might be having issues with their microphone, but until they figure it out, I'm going to ask a question from the chat. So I saw this question that Arnold asked, and I really did want to ask this because it's something that I think would apply to everyone, and also the fact that today is the deadline for the internships for NASA. So just putting it out there. So Arnold asked, what resources should students seek to gain experience in aerospace? Any competitions or programs? What do you guys would suggest something that students can do?
One of the
Well,
things, oh, I'm sorry, go
oh,
ahead.
sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. If you're interested in cybersecurity and you don't have any experience in your background, join events like Capture the Flag. You do, you start hacking. It's for any level, like if you're a junior level, or if you do have some experience in hacking, you can do that, throw that on your resume. And then also JPL does look into like cybersecurity certifications as well. So that one, there's certifications for people that don't have a lot of experience or no experience. You can study that and then build yourself up. So that's a tip.
Eddie, you were going to share something?
Yeah, there's a few things that you can do. So obviously, if you have the resources and you're able to do so, you can participate in, say you're in community college, the NASA Aerospace Community College Scholars, you could do that. If you are able to participate in, say, SHIP, which is the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, they have a engineering challenge that you can get involved with. Great Minds in STEM, they have a college bowl, and these are all things that you can put on your resume. So the college bowl at Great Minds in STEM, they separate them into teams by organizations, companies, and agencies. So there was like a team NASA, and we get to work side by side with them for 2 or 3 days, but we can develop a relationship and we can vouch for them. We could give them a letter of recommendation, and we can give them a lot of inside information because we've worked with them. Also, too, if you're not able to do any of that while you're in school, try and get involved in as many projects as you can, and you can then populate your resume to the projects that you're doing, but be specific. If you led a team to, build an engine or a CubeSat or something of that effect, put that on your resume because it is a skill set that you can put to make yourself look more marketable.
I want to add a little bit to what Eddie said on the project-based classes. It's also important to take those classes to better understand yourself, better understand what you're good at as part of a team, areas where you need to improve, right? And just the experiences that come with that. So when I had my Pathways intern interview, I thought it was going to be all technical, but it turns out they asked me these behavioral based questions on, tell me about a time that you had to work with a difficult teammate and how did you resolve that? Tell me about a time that you had to, say something difficult to your boss. How did you approach that conversation? Tell me about a time that you had to sacrifice for the team. Explain that story. So a lot of the project-based classes that I took prior to my internship experience, I drew from. I was also an RA at college, and I was able to draw a lot of problem resolution skills um, from there as well, and use those stories to bolster why I would be a good candidate, right? Because they know based on your resume and where you go to school that you're technically competent, but they want to see, do I want to work with this person? Would I want to go over to the cubicle next to me where this intern is working and say, hey, so and so, like, I want to work with you, right? It's that people skill that they really want to see.
Thank you so much for answering that. I see it's almost 3 minutes close to our wrap up time. So what I'm going to do now is, first of all, I'm really, really thankful for all of the 5 panelists who joined us today. It's really an honor having you guys let us kick off our company overviews with such an all-star panel. So I really, really am grateful for you guys taking out the time to do so. What I would love for you guys to do now is that, considering we have just a few minutes left, do you guys have any final pieces of advice, any last words, short advice for people who are listening to you right now?
One of the things that I'd like to say, Heater, is with the imposter syndrome, everybody brings something to the table. And I'm not as educated as a lot of the people that are on this panel, but I can tell you this, I am street smart and I have my PhD on the street. And my street smart opens a lot of doors that others can't open. So it's okay to be yourself and be true to yourself, because confidence will take you places. And for me, and this is something my father taught me, was if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. You need to be able to be around people that are going to be smarter and lift your game and raise your bar. So I have no problem being in a room with smart people because they teach me things. And you know what I do? I ask questions. So ask questions along the way until you get to where you need to be.
Susie, any thoughts?
Yes, never give up. Even if like you fail a class or you're not doing good in your homework, or if your internship, it's like, oh shoot, I'm not getting anything. Don't give up. Keep going forward. One day you're gonna look back and you're gonna be like, oh my gosh. Then you're gonna have a story to tell for other people, for other students. You guys got this.
Thank you. Leslie.
I would say keep an open mind. You never know where life could lead you. I had no idea that I'd been living in Huntsville, working at Marshall Space Flight Center. I had no idea that I would be become a systems engineer and now venture into project management. So you just never know where life will take you. So don't be like, oh, I don't want to live in this place. I don't want to work for this company. You never know. You just may like it. And be willing to try something new.
Sweet. Zane.
I would say I would add on to what I previously spoke on. Get out of your college rooms and take opportunities of the other resources that are um, there. So I was an RA. I was part of many project classes. I drew a lot of my experience outside of the technical world, and really helped shape me as more well-rounded. So I had folks who would just stay in the dorm all the time, and I understand with COVID it's tough, but try your best to become involved with a lot of the associations, clubs, affiliations, network, and try and become more well-rounded. That's all.
And last but not the least, Claudia.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it's so great having a conversation with you all and being here. Just wanted to say that everybody in this call is perfectly capable and is going to accomplish so many amazing things. You just have to really tune into yourself, love yourself, believe that you are great things in the future. Your journey might have challenges and it's not going to be easy, but that's exactly what is going to make you that amazing engineer, that amazing scientist, because that experience will give you a different perspective, a different approach to a problem that you're going to be solving in the future. I am just amazed about the different people who are on this call right now, and it's such an honor to be here. If you're interested in learning more about NCAS, I will be having an Instagram live chat with Eddie on Tuesday. And so you can follow me on Instagram. I'll leave my username in the chat so you can follow me, and we're going to have a conversation and you can tune into that as well. So yeah.
All right, that was amazing. Thank you so much, all of you. Again, before I wrap this up, I would like to mention that for the upcoming events with Non-Traditional, we have a Boeing panel similar to this one on March 23rd at 4 p.m. PST. And then we also have an upcoming Lockheed Martin one. Arnold, can you mention the date for the Lockheed Martin one? I did not catch that. Okay. So that's a wrap. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And have a great night. Have a great weekend. Stay safe. And thank you all for joining us.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much. You guys were amazing.
Thank you so much.